problem here to try on your own here. Let's say it's 2i squared plus 3i plus 4i squared minus 8i. And it would just say to simplify, or somehow you would know to combine these two things. And the first and the third here, you have to reduce with that I squared. So will you give that a try, please?
Mhm. -6 minus 5i.
I believe that's correct. Yeah, so -6 minus 5i. Perfect. Okay, so the not too bad here. So now let me give you a question based on that, and you have to do a bit more work here. You do have to use the I squared thing, but there's also a little bit of distributing that needs to be done. So take a look at this question. If you have any questions, please let me know, but go ahead and give this a try, please.
I think I did something wrong for this one.
Okay, let's take a look here together. So 5 plus 12i minus, now inside parentheses here, the 9i squared, that becomes -9.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to distribute this negative to both. Right, so it would be like +9 plus 6i, like this.
Okay.
Do you have a final answer for me on this one?
Letter D.
Letter D, good. Okay, let me give you one like this to try. Just I'll rearrange it slightly. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying you're going to get like a bunch of complex problems in this, but you will get some where you've got to combine like terms, and that's really all we're emphasizing here. But we'll just do one or two more, and then we'll switch topics. Let's say it's 3i squared minus 4i minus 6 plus 2i. Would you try that one for us, please?
3 minus 2i.
Okay, so this is -3 minus 4i minus 6 minus 2i. Do you want to change your answer?
Oh, -6i minus 9.
Yes, or -9 minus 6i. All right, so let me give you something else related to this. Sorry, I didn't went too fast. You want to get that down or not? So the other thing you will have to reasonably be able to do here, and I'll just give you a related question. So let's say I asked you to foil this pair of binomials. Okay, so if you recall foil, you take that 14 and you multiply it by 7, and you'd say, oh, that's 98. You take the 14 and multiply it by the 12x, that's 84x. Then the inner minus 14x, and then the last minus 24x squared. But you'll get a problem like this, where instead of x's, they give you i's. Does this change the answer from the previous line if it's i's instead of x's?
No.
It's just i's instead of x's.
Mhm.
Okay, but what can we do over here to the right? What does this become?
It's -24 times -1, so +24.
That's right. So this reduces to, we got 94 and 24, that's 122 plus 70 I.
Okay.
Did I do something wrong? I didn't multiply correctly somewhere, but anyway, that's the foil that you would never get numbers this large. So let me give
Okay.
you one to try here. Let's say it's 3 minus 2i times 4 plus 5i, and you're multiplying. So I'd like you to foil this and then simplify.
Seven I plus 22.
Yes. Now the answers are going to be presented in the opposite order that you're saying, which but you're not wrong. It's just there's a preference for the second way. So just keep that in mind when
Okay.
you're looking for it. It may not stand out. All right, we don't need to dive into that topic any further. Do we might as you get you might get something we don't really know. All right, so
Mhm.
let's look at some other questions here. I grabbed a topic. It's got some more quadratic equations in it, but they're presented slightly differently. So we'll just transition to this for now. Okay, what's kind of your, when you see a question like this, it says, what is the positive solution to the given equation? What, could you just tell me kind of what you interpret that to mean, or if anything about that is unclear?
Is it what um the answer to the equation is positive?
It is, but that means there's like, it's almost implying there's another solution. There's also a negative solution
Okay.
to the given equation. Um, how would you solve this if you did not have multiple choice?
I would subtract 10 from both sides and then take the square root of x squared.
Yeah, and you would get x equals plus or minus 9. Okay.
Mhm.
Now on the ACT, you get 5 answers to choose from. I know I mentioned that earlier. The reason that matters is for a problem like this, you really don't want to try the answers because, I mean, imagine, let's say A was really, you know, -9 and E was +9. I mean, that doesn't
Mhm.
really get you to the, I mean, A is correct, but it's not the positive one. So trying the answers is a really bad strategy in the ACT because there's more answers.
Yeah.
So just really keep that in mind, because that there's no, you the questions should be shorter here. So try solving them directly rather than choosing to substitute the answer. Okay, here's a new question for you to work on. It's kind of like the last one. Could you try solving this, please?
Um 64.
Yes, very good. Why doesn't -64 work?
Um
Well, let's look at why 64 works. So the square root of 64 plus 4, does that equal 12? That's 8
mhm.
plus 4, is that 12? Yes.
Yeah.
So what is the problem with this?
So it would be -4.
Well, the square root of -64 is not allowed. You're never allowed to take a square root of a negative number.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so here is another problem. I'm just gonna throw at you, and you can try it or not. I'm gonna just step away for 30 seconds. But take a look at this and just see if there's anything comes to mind to be able to solve it, but I'll be right back with you.
Okay.
All right. Any questions on this or any idea how to get started?
So you plug in 9 for x and then you move it over, so it's the square root of k plus 2 equals 9.
Yes.
And then to undo the square root, you square both sides.
Okay. What does that become on the right?
And that would be equals 9 squared. So that would be k plus 2 equals 81.
Very good.
And then you subtract 2, 79.
Yeah. Very good. Now, another yet again, a reason not to try the answers is sometimes you'd say, oh, 7 plus 2, oh, that's 9. 9 minus 9 is 0, but it's the square root of 9.
Mhm.
And you have to be very, very careful about some things like that. Now let's look at numbers, this next question here together. When you got a question like this in your algebra 2 class, you'd have to move things over, you'd have to square, things like that. This is an example of a problem where you probably do want to try the answers. Okay. Now, when you try the answers, there's the strategy on the ACT is to try B and D. It's called the BD approach.
Mhm.
And the idea is that, let's say B is too small and D is too large, then the answer is C. But if B is too large and D is way too large, then the answer is A. Or if B is really too small and D is kind of too small, then it must be BE. So if you're gonna try answers, you generally try B and D and then hope to either like squeeze the other answer or know that it's the one at the other extremes for that.
Okay.
Now it kind of works with 4, but it's not as good. But it definitely works with 5. So I would recommend always trying B and D on the ACT. Now for the SAT, you could either try AC or BD and do the same thing. But let's just do BD for tonight. So try the 9 and the 27. They have to work out perfectly though. And that's
Okay.
what's one of the main issues here. You might see it's like, well, when you try 9, that's the square root of 37. That's bad because we don't know the square root of 37. So this wasn't maybe the best problem to show you with this, but because you need to be able to take the square root of the number.
Okay.
So that means that 9 is out. Now, when you try D, it's the square root of 27 plus 28. That's the square root of 55. That's also bad. So that's out. So this really is not a great problem for this. But if we try A, and actually let me have you let me just go down here and have you try A. A is 8. See if could you confirm that works for this problem?
It's the square root of 36, which is 6.
Okay, and then keep going. Minus 2 times the square root of 9. Does this equal 0?
Yes.
Yes, it does. Okay. Let me give you another question here to look at. All right, so take a look at this. There will be answers, but I want to ask you how you might try to solve this without looking at the answers. What would you do?
I think I would get rid of the fraction and
Okay, how would you do that? How would you get rid of the x plus 1 on the bottom?
I would multiply each side by x plus 1.
Perfect. Yeah, that's correct. Now on the right, it cancels. On the left, in this particular problem, it is much better to do this, write it as a single binomial squared rather than to FOIL.
Okay.
So occasionally that's the better approach here. Now, how do you undo the square?
Square root it.
Square root it. So this becomes x plus 1 equals plus or minus the square root of 2. And then the last step is to subtract 1 from both sides. something like that. So the point though is whenever you have the same thing in the top left and the bottom right, or whenever you're multiplying it, sometimes you actually just write it as it's squared rather than foiling. So let me give
Okay.
you another problem here to look at. It's kind of the same type of problem. 3 over x minus 1 equals x minus 1. I'd like you to solve for x. How are you doing on this one?
Is it -1 plus or minus square root of 3?
So it's very close. So it's definitely 3 equals x minus 1 squared, and then you undo with that. But how do you undo this subtraction by 1?
Oh, you add 1.
You add 1, yeah. So you get x equals 1 plus or minus the square root of 3. Good. Okay, let's have you try another one here that's kind of similar. This 81 seems to be in a lot of these questions here, but go ahead and give this a try, please.
X equals 4.
So when it says possible solutions, that means there's more than one in most cases, and you've missed at least one of them.
Is it plus or minus 4?
Okay, I see why you would do that. Okay, so when you take the square root of both sides, very important, it's plus or minus the square root on one of them. So in this case, it's plus or minus 9. So how does that change your answer? It's not just, you don't just negate the answer. It's two equations now. It's 2x plus 1 equals 9 and 2x plus 1 equals minus 9.
Okay.
So how does that change your answer?
X equals 4, and then X also equals -5.
Yes. X equals 4, X equals minus 5. All right. Let me give you one more of these to try. Let's go 25 equals, let's go 1 plus 2x squared, like that.
X equals 2 and -3.
Yes, those are both correct. Very good. Awesome. Okay. So one last question for you before we move to another topic. I missed this one earlier, but it's a good one for you to look at. It's the kind of question where you want to really make sure that you're actually answering the question, not just looking at how the numbers work. Decide, okay, is it really that number, or do I just think it's that number?
Letter C.
Yes. Now, it's also interesting that C is the only one that works as a square root. Like I would have given you answers that work so that you would at least give it a thought.
Mhm.
But it's the only, you got to be able to take the square root. So that's kind of a hint on these, is you got to be able to take the square root of these numbers to be able to answer the question.
Okay.
Any questions on that?
No.
Okay, let's switch to something different. I don't know, maybe more interpretive. Let's go to, I think we've done all those. All right. This one will take a bit of effort to read, because there's a lot here. But as always, try to start with the actual question. You may or may not need the other information that's given there. What do you think here?
Is it A?
How did you come up with A?
So the people that rated it 3 or more stars, the number is 50 out of 325 people.
So so whenever you get an A, you should always ask yourself, is it really A, or do I just think it's A? Yes, those three numbers add up to 50. Okay. The problem is that that's not out of 325. Like if you add all of these up, it's a total of 70.
Okay.
So what they're saying is, and this kind of applies to your stats class, the sample is that, okay, 50 out of 70 liked it, but the population is 325. So they're saying, like, how would this project to the 325 people?
Okay.
And if you probably want to grab a calculator if you don't to
Is it letter C?
yeah, C looks pretty reasonable here for that one. So it's sometimes you got to be careful about just adding up things. That total could come into play here. All right, let's look at some other plots, graphs, tables. there seem to be a fair number of these. These are more in line with the ACT because it's very quick. I think it's 60 questions in 60 minutes. There's not a lot of hard calculations. It's just your mental clock has to be a little faster on this one.
Okay.
So this is the question. Start there and decide if you need more information from me.
I would say letter D.
Okay, so when it goes negative, that means it's going down, right? It's got to be going down and to the right.
Mm-hmm.
So if I look here, to me, that's going down and to the right, and then these are going down and to the right.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say I mean, you could even go a little bit further here, like this is also going down, but to me, it's only 2 intervals, which means C and D are out. Now maybe you're looking at it slightly differently than I am. It's kind of also in here that now you said C, I'm sorry. Or
I
D.
said letter D.
Letter D. Okay. So now that I'm looking at this again, I guess I need to really, let me get rid of this again. I guess it is going down there. So there are 3 intervals. So that would get rid of A and B. Yeah, I guess I'll go with D. You're right. My first look at it, I didn't see that one. So obviously a little easier to look at when you're having it right in front of you on the test.
Yeah,
Are you taking the ACT in person or online?
in person.
Person, okay. All right. Take a look at this question here again. It's not meant to be complicated. There's no calculations. It's just read and interpret.
I'm a little confused on this one.
What is it asking? Can you tell me in your own words what it's asking for?
So you're trying to find the closest to the monthly revenue for June 29th,
June 2009.
2009.
Yes. Now, on the x-axis, it says number of months after June 2009.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't want any months after it. We want right at June 2009.
Okay.
So that corresponds to like x equals 0.
Oh, okay. So is it letter A?
Yes.
Okay.
Very good. Okay. Again, no calculations. It's like just try to just think of a number that actually is there, or look for something that you can say, okay, I think that's right because this number is there. All right, so here's the question. I got to snip in the graphs. Just trying to get all this and together. Sorry, I don't, this isn't great, but okay. All right, go ahead and give this one a try, please.
Letter B.
Yeah, so what's the difference between like B and C? Because they both go to
Um,
0, whereas these don't.
yeah.
Or what's
Well,
wrong with C, I guess, is another way for me to ask it.
well, as the time goes on to about like 70, 80 minutes, the graph goes up.
So that would be like going back and getting a popcorn refill.
Yeah.
And it's been a while, but I always like when they allow you to refill, but it yeah,
Mhm.
usually it just you keep seeing it go down. Good. Now they ask you variations on this question, like you're driving somewhere and then you park your car, or you're on the highway at constant speed. So these are some things that you might see. Okay, a couple more questions. You're doing really well at these. Again, they're not meant to like overwhelm you with calculations. They're just interprets. Let's have you do like one or two more, and I'll grab another topic for us to look at.
Let's see.
Any questions for me on this one?
Is it letter C?
So they're asking for the greatest change between two consecutive months. So you're looking for one that's the biggest like up or the biggest down. So like to me, this one from 5 to 2.5 is the biggest
Mhm.
one, which is 2.5. Yeah. Okay, let's in the time we have left, let's look at some systems again. I'll just remind you of one of the approaches that we used for systems that may not work as well in the ACT. So we talked about using this table method
Mhm.
for systems. So one of the reasons that the table method may not work that well is because now you've got a letter E. I know it's wrong in this one, but you would then have to create a table of yet another value to try. So sometimes you just need to directly solve these things rather than see if you can figure out like a shortcut to it. Okay, now let's look at one that's a little easier to solve and go through how to do it when it's in a certain format. So let me snip this question in. So as a reminder with systems, if the variables are opposite in sign, you just add them. You add these equations up vertically. So could you add these up vertically for me?
Mhm. 4x equals 0.
Okay, so what is the value of x when you divide by 4?
0.
0. I want you to use that, and it doesn't matter which equation, but let's say it asks you to solve for y. Could you tell me the value of y based on that, please?
Y equals 4.
Y equals 4. Good. So really a good idea to get in the habit of just solving them, not looking at the answers as much here. Okay, so here's
Okay.
another type of system that you might see. This one does not have like, oh, they're opposite in sign. It just has a lot of letters. So this is where you have to multiply one equation by a number. So let's say I wanted you to eliminate x. What would you multiply the second equation by to eliminate x?
-4.
Yeah, so it's negative 4x plus 8y equals negative 12. So what I want you to do here is I want you to add the equations and solve for both x and y. When you add them, you'll be able to solve for y, but then you can go back to one of the original equations to solve for x, please.
Y equals -4 and x equals -5.
So 3y equals 12, y equals 4. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Or did yours get the sign error? And then you can use either equation. I'll use the second one. X minus 2y equals 3. So we'll substitute in for y. So x minus 8 equals 3, and got a x equals 11 on this one.
Oh, okay.
So just be careful with signs. You will have multiple choice, so it won't be you'll know. I mean, you'll know if there's an issue. All right, last question we'll look at
Okay.
for tonight here. This one's kind of interesting. It is a system, but it's not a traditional system. It uses kind of a weird substitution. So if you look at this up here at the top, you actually can substitute in for x minus 7 y. So it's really weird. Well, just go ahead and watch here. It's y instead of x minus 7. And you're like, why would I ever do that? Well, sometimes you just do this thing that they give. You divide both sides by y, and that gives you 1 equals x plus 3. If you subtract 3 from both sides, you get x equals -2. And you're like, well, wait, why didn't that work? Well, because you're not supposed to actually do it this way. So when you substitute in, you have to be careful that you actually can get a solution out of it. And you don't just get, just a number, because obviously this number isn't there and you would have no idea what to do from here. So just be careful when you're substituting in, because that kind of looks like the only thing to do here, but there is another way. The better way is to set x minus 7 equal to x plus 3 times x minus 7, and then to FOIL the right hand side. So you get 3x minus 7x minus 21. And then you move things around, you get x squared. So this is minus 4x, and then you minus next, you get minus 5x plus 7, you get minus 14. And then this factors into minus 7x plus 2. And that gives you the -2 that we had, but that's not the one we want. We want the x equals 7.
Okay.
All right. Good luck. If I don't see you between now and then, I think a lot of the skills you learned will apply. Just be a little bit more aware of the clock. It's really working against you. 60 questions, or it's a lot of questions in a short amount of time.
Mhm.
And try to solve them rather than using the answers, because there's so many to try. But
Yeah.
that is it. That is it for
Okay.
tonight. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time.
Okay. Thank you. Good
You're
night.
welcome. Bye now.